Hello everyone, my name is Space Dirt, and today I'm finally back with another Conlang Showcase. This time we'll be delving into a world of floating cities and exploring Kittich. First, let's go over a bit of history. Kittich and its earlier forms served as the language of the Kid people, an ethnic group from the planet Urinu, whose state eventually grew into a regional power before being conquered by the Cha Empire, the largest empire in the world at the time. Because of a large Kittich resistance movement after the takeover, quite a number of ethnic Kids became political prisoners. Due to this large influx of Kid people, Kittich started to become a sort of lingua franca within the penal system. After the majority of the world's population departed on colony ships, an event known as the Great Flight, the penal population became the only sizable group of people left on Runu, and Kittich was now the most widely spoken language on the planet. Eventually, large floating cities called mondurs, or mondara to use the native plural, were constructed after a massive technological breakthrough, and that is where Runu's population currently resides. Now, after that quick tangent, let's go over some of the features of Kittich. Firstly, let's take a look at its phonology. Kittich features a relatively modest phonemic inventory, which has changed relatively little since the proto-language, though it has gained a post-alveolar and labiovelar series, along with some other changes. In addition to this, Kittich's vowel system grew substantially, and it developed vowel harmony. Kittich features prominent backness and rounding harmony. All vowels follow backness harmony, though low vowels both block and do not undergo rounding harmony. Other diachronic changes led to some other phonological quirks, like velar stop sometimes becoming H, for example. Kittich syllable structure is relatively simple, though it has increased in overall complexity from the CVC of the proto-language. Words may start with any consonant and end with two consonants at the most, though word final plosive clusters are not permitted. Vowels may not come into contact, and word internal clusters may consist of a maximum of two consonants, except in compound words. Stress is also relatively simple, and always falls on the first syllable of the word. Now, let's move on to the writing system. Kittich is written in the Kittich alphabet, a natively developed script that has been used to write Kittich since before the time of the proto-language. Historically, the script originates from a system of logographs which were carved into stone. Eventually, a switch was made to writing on a papyrus-like material with a reed pen. Due to the new writing material and the greater ease of more rapid communication, the glyphs simplified to their current form. Being an alphabet, each sound is by and large represented by one glyph, though due to phonological evolution, this doesn't always hold true, especially in the case of the vowels. For back vowels, the glyphs for U and O can both be used to represent the schwa, while the original glyph for the schwa is one of two glyphs that are used to represent the vowel E, the other being the original E. Furthermore, the glyphs for U and E are also used for the semivowels W and Y, so there's a lot going on there. In consonants, the problem isn't quite as bad, though there's still some historical spelling. One example comes from the glyphs that come from the velar fricatives in the proto-language, which either fortified to stops or lenited to the glottal fricative. This has caused a situation where there are three ways to write H, two of which can also be used for velar stops, and two different ways to write the labialized velar stops and the post-alveolar affricates. Despite this, spelling has still been kept relatively up-to-date, and literacy rates are incredibly high throughout the Montarat. Moving on to grammar, Kittich is moderately synthetic and agglutinative, and has mostly head-final syntax with a default SOV word order. It also has some fun features like split ergativity, optional noun classifiers, and no grammatical aspect at all. Let's first get into nouns. Nouns are only inflected for number and case. Number is rather straightforward, with nouns taking a plural marking to mark plural, though nouns are obligatorily singular after numerals and other quantifiers. After these quantifiers, one can add an optional classifier which suffixes to the word and obeys vowel harmony. This process occurs quite frequently in colloquial Kittich, but much less frequently in formal speech. Kittich has a moderate case system of 6 cases, which has shifted a bit through linguistic evolution. Besides the loss of the vocative case, the old instrumental case became the ergative case. In the proto-language, the instrumental case was frequently used to mark the agent and passive constructions, and the use of the passive became so pervasive that it eventually became the default past tense, creating a tense-based split ergative system. As for the other cases, the nominative marks the subject of intransitive verbs and of transitive verbs in the non-past, as well as the object in past sentences, while the accusative marks the direct object of past transitive verbs. The dative marks the indirect object and motion towards something, the genitive marks possession and motion away from something, and the locative serves to mark stationary location. Postpositions also govern certain cases, and some two-way postpositions exist where the case used is determined by semantics. As for adjectives, they're a relatively simple class in Kiddish, coming before nouns and not taking any inflection as well. Alternatively, they can serve as adverbs modifying the whole clause. Now, let's move on to verbs. Verbs are inflected for person, number, tense, and mood. As mentioned previously, Kiddish has no grammatical aspect. To get an idea of how these inflections work, let's build a verb from the ground up. Let's start with the verb mar, meaning to see. As it is, it functions as a second-person singular imperative form. If we add a modal suffix, we can create the subjunctive and conditional stems. The subjunctive is used as a general irrealis, marking doubt, uncertainty, and wishes. In addition, the subjunctive form is used for non-second-person imperatives. The conditional is more limited and is mainly used in conditional statements and polite requests. Next comes the tense suffix, which is added onto the indicative stem to make the past tense stem, with modal information in the past being conveyed by different person endings, which will be addressed later. There also used to be a future stem, but due to phonological erosion, it disappeared completely, forming the current past, non-past system. Now, with all of the stems formed, one can add on personal endings for first, second, and third person in the singular or plural, and there's also a clusivity distinction in the first person plural. The person endings also differ depending on tense, as well as mood in the past conjugation. Past endings derive from different conjugations of the copula, which was used alongside the passive participle in the old passive construction. As this became the new default past, the copula was glommed onto the passive participle, creating new person endings in the past. In addition, Kiddish also makes use of a couple of non-finite verb forms. First and foremost among these is the verbal noun. These are used extremely pervasively in stringing together multiple verbs in one clause and frequently take case marking, though they are also often used in subject position in the nominative. There are also two participles, the past and the present. Both are used in adjectival constructions, but the past participle is also used in forming the passive. The passive is rather restricted and is only used when the agent is not stated. When one wishes to state both the agent and patient with emphasis on the patient, the active voice is used with the object fronted, and due to case marking and verb agreement, there is no ambiguity. Transitivity is very important in Kiddish and is an inherent property of the verb. Unlike English, no verbs can truly be used both transitively and intransitively. Because of this, one can find pairs of verbs with similar meanings that differ only in transitivity. In other cases, like with the verb tamut, meaning eat, it can be used in a pseudo-intransitive sense with a dummy object pronoun. Kiddish is also very happy to drop arguments if they're clear from verbal marking. Though, due to the fact that the subject is marked in the non-past and the object is marked in the past, the subject can only be dropped in non-past clauses and the object only in past clauses. Now that we've gone over a bit of what Kiddish is like, there's just one last thing to show, that being a short audio in the language detailing the necessary processes for traveling from one mundur to another.
Ytsymy mondaradav kiekui, tyysityyst afratasnavak, tyysynt kapasta short, tyysityystysyr onnan atkasanak. Atkasa pavam utru, are tyysityystyvtsä chatlem, tyysityystä aglatanak. Min tynsnyn are symyn mondryn puravna mierhedinknak, symyn mondaradav kiekui, tyysityystä aglatak. Nakantraja tyysityystä aglata tjäiktivtsä, ytnä tjolchi sunvum, tyysityystä aglatasatsa, talhafna jakalmanak. Meserpil, tung kim gälser kiekui, symyn talhafna ja jasmartavtsa, almasta kapakun. Quajasmerasar pyl, zäkikim iret sakulasal syysnevik, va mirpisvisel syysnevik. Ytsymyn dolhafnat sakulasal syysnevik, akaskalsar pyl, tyystä aglata tjäikim. Tyystä aglata sonovum, symyn tyystä amerguala talvum. Baraknajet ilme mondarav geegui sanaps, aja wotra upumasar navaja, lörhväja. Mests emelirjön min lörhävk saafanak. Nadalavk tisi ysöpä symyn baraktatalaftasal annan, almasta kapaku. Symyn tyystä aglata sondusor, ausa amerguatasal pyl, karup tyystyt sanyn.
Alrighty, that should be all. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe, and this is Spacer signing off.